Every team needs a person that is trying to bring out the best of their own teammates and has a very positive outlook on the situation within the game or just generally in life, right? And now, if you think about the roles in a team, most people only concentrate on a couple different roles in which they want a team to have. Now, you think of the shot caller, for instance. You want someone who knows what to do, who is very decisive and can make calls on the fly and be able to follow through with those calls. And this is someone that is generally very intuitive with what they want to do with the game. And also, they know exactly what kind of different tactics that they want to do and how they generally want to set up the team as far as play style. And then you have your carry fucking just mechanical beast, right? You have your Dardoks of the league, you have your Forgivens of the league that just are insane mechanically and do their job really well, which is focusing on themselves and focusing on basically carrying this big burden of mechanical prowess on the team, and therefore kind of shitting on the enemy opponent, right? And then you have the veteran. The veteran is supposed to be this calm, cool, and collected person who knows exactly kind of what to say at the right times and has been through multiple different situations. So history is kind of backing him so that he can go through that knowledge within his head and say, hey, I've been in this situation before. Here's what I think we should do. And that is oftentimes the shot caller as well, because they've already gone through multiple different scenarios, so they have this experience to then draw on, and then they're able to shot call. But not everyone who is a veteran is capable of shot calling because of their personality type. Maybe they're a more reserved person, they're an introvert, so they don't really like to speak out, and they don't really like to step on people's toes or try and command people. They like to stay kind of in their own shell and be told what to do because that feels comfortable for them, but they still know kind of what to do in a sense regardless. So you don't really have to give a veteran who is an introvert that much command, because he already knows what to do for the most part. And then you have your sacrificial lambs. And these guys are the ones that basically don't get any resources, and they just try and hang on for dear life, right? Like, someone has to get the least amount of resources. So this is the person. This is your Odoamne that gets a bad matchup in the top lane, and he prefers to do that so that he can then allow his other laners to have a better matchup for them to then carry him to win the game, right? And this is kind of his philosophy to look at the game, to say, hey, I'm willing to sacrifice my own lane phase in order for you guys to do extremely well in yours. And that is also because I think I can do pretty damn well in a losing matchup regardless. So I'd rather have you guys, have a better lane matchup. And then you have, say, Dyrus, for instance. Dyrus is another person that was very sacrificial in his playstyle. Oftentimes he would get dove by himself. He would know the gank's coming, and I'll admit that when he does know the gank is coming, sometimes he'll just fuck up and stay at the tower and still die. So some of that is misplay, but generally I think Dyrus was a pretty good top laner, and he's not given enough credit for his role within what TSM was, which was, hey, everyone forget about top lane. Dyrus is alone, and we're going to make a play either in the bot lane, or we're going to control mid lane to get priority there, and then Bjergsen can do whatever the fuck he wants on the rest of the map. And then you have someone like Biofrost. Biofrost is a very selfless person, especially when he played with Doublelift. He was someone who kind of inted, or looked like he inted for his team, but really it was just him setting up a play and knowing that, hey, if I give my life up, then we can then make this really great play because I know my teammates are very mechanically good, so we can pull that off. Bjergsen and double lift, we can pull that off. And this might be the same thing with him on CLG currently in the summer split. And now, moral is a key factor in how well a team performs. And I don't think a lot of people take this into account because when you have higher morale, there's more of a likelihood that you're going to make these miraculous comebacks, right? These comebacks where you're down 2 inhibitors, they're pushing on your third, and you have someone that's saying, hey, I think we can still defend this. Here's kind of what we need to do. Like, we got this shit, guys. Like, let's keep on it so that we can possibly win the game if we kill these guys, get an ace, and then go get Baron. It's that easy, right? And so you have someone in the background that's always reminding you of the possibilities of how to still win the game. And this also helps prevent losing streaks a ton, right? Maybe you lose the 2 games, in that weekend, and then you come into the next week and you're like, okay, well, this guy is saying, hey, we can win this week, although it's harder teams that we're facing. Maybe we're facing a Cloud9 and a TSM this weekend, and the weekend before we lost to fucking Golden Guardians and Optic, So this is the person that says we still have a chance. There is some way in which we win. Guys, let's figure that out. And that may be the time to where this very positive person then leans on the shot caller and says, hey, what can we do to win the game? Now, High, I think, is one of the only exceptions in which I can think of that has mostly all of these qualities, at least back in the day. He had great mechanics. He was someone who was very positive and kept talking to the team saying that we can do this, we can come back. And that's how they got so many comebacks, is because he had faith in how that they were doing things and what to do next. And then, of course, you have the shot calling aspect, which he is very famous for. So I think High is one of those savants when it comes to this perfect teammate almost, at least, back in the day, back in his heyday. Now, out of game cohesion is incredibly important. I mean, crucially important and highly underrated, because when you're a team which is able to connect out of game, it allows for far easier criticism and more honesty. It's kind of like joking with your friends, right? Every group of friends has this inside joke, and some of them might be a little bit fucked up, right? Like some of them might be hurtful to other people if you are outside of that inside joke, right? But in that little bond, you guys connect and you have more honesty, you're open more, and you're open more to your personalities as they connect with each other. And then you also have friends that you are just brutally honest with, right? That they say that is what makes a good friend, is someone who is very honest with you and is willing to say, when you're fucking up, that, hey, you're fucking up in whatever that you're doing at that current time, right? So this is the same thing within a team environment. You want people to be open to criticism, to be more honest with each other, and that creates their bond even stronger, right? And this allows for breaking down barriers, whether that be cultural or preconceived notions, right? So culturally, you can think of breaking down barriers as, maybe this Korean guy, I don't really understand his culture a whole lot, right? So if you're just strictly business partners, if you're just strictly playing on this team to kind of win, then you aren't really going to learn about his culture that much. You're just going to learn these little bits and pieces, but that's because they just happen to fall into your lap. You're not actually trying to learn about this person's culture, right? And then you have preconceived notions of someone. Say a player joins your team. For instance, let's go back to the Dardoch thing, right? Say you think Dardoch is a complete asshole, right? Because of his previous team. So you don't even try and get to know him. And suddenly he says something offhand and you're just like, oh, typical fucking Dardoch, right? Super toxic. Like, okay, fuck this guy. But in all reality, maybe if you were to open up to him and talk to him a bit more, maybe you would understand his perspective a little bit better and maybe appreciate some other things about his personality so that you can connect with him. Now, then, of course, there is the TSM Mithy kind of controversy, I guess, within this current timeline of TSM Legends, and how Mithy was saying that they need to be open to more criticism, and if the whole team falls apart, like, screw it, that's fine as long as we tried our best, because I'm here to win. I'm here on this team because I want to win championships, and this team expects no less, and TSM should expect no less. So let's try and actually hash this shit out, and we'll work on our problems together and just be honest. And that's a problem that you can see within an environment that tries to be too professional, right? When you try and be too professional, there are different masks in which people put on when they try and be professional, right? That's not actually your true character. Your professional character, like say when you're at a job, right? If you've ever had a job at like Target or Walmart or McDonald's or, fast food industry, customer service, whatever, you realize that you have to put some magnitude of fakeness in order to function at the job at what a corporate level wants you to function at, because that's how our society works, at least within North America, is that they expect you to be very polite and to kind of take some shit from the customers, especially when they're mad at you, and kind of keep a cool and level head, even though someone's being a complete dick. Right? And now normally under regular circumstances, when you're not working at that job, you'd just be like, well, fuck off. Like, I don't need to take this shit. Guess what? I'm walking away. I don't need to listen to anything that you have to say because clearly you're an idiot. Well, in a professional environment, you can't really do that within our society, right? You still have to think about your job, your income, things that are just tied to this specific job and the outcome in which what would happen if you were to actually do that, although it may be deserved in other circumstances. So that is the same thing with a team. Do you really want a team to function like that, to where you can't actually be honest, because a professional environment isn't honest? Like, in absolutely no way is a professional environment honest. So winning is important, but it all can't be about business. Some of the most successful people in the world are at the top because they're charismatic, because they are able to create connections with the people that they deal business with, right? And that's how sometimes you get to the top, is that you have contacts, you're good at making connections. And whether you like that reality or not, that is the reality. And when you're trying to do good business, is that you have to put your personality out there a little bit in order for people to connect with you on a more personal level. Now, coaches and GMs, they just need to do a better job, frankly, at scouting personalities rather than just looking at statistics. I think scouting in general is pretty shit in NA to begin with, because teams don't often consider how a player's style will mesh with the team. I mean, even just a play style, for instance, they don't consider, say, take for example Mike Young, from going back to TSM again. Looking back at how Mike Young would have functioned with a roster like this, I still would have predicted the same outcome, that Mike Young is this unproven rookie, which you're taking a very big gamble on, right? And maybe you think that these superstar carries can kind of make up for the disadvantages that Mike Young may have had in his beginning weeks within the team and his growing pains. But if you look at Bjergsen as a player, he's relied a lot on his jungler to function. And then with Sven and Mithy playing mostly passive throughout their entire career, you can see that you need someone that is very calculated and is able to control the mid lane and not do some crazy shit. But at the same time, yeah, still have this aggressiveness as well too. And so it's just very disappointing that TSM didn't look at how a playstyle meshes with their team. Now, if you look at something like personality that meshes, you can look at SKT's old lineup, right? With Bang, with Wolf, Faker, and like Bengi and Marn, right? Those personalities, really great. You have Wolf, which no one says that Wolf is one of the greatest supports within his entire timeline. I don't think that you can consider Bang the number one support in his entire career. I don't think that's a realistic statement to say. Now, when you take into account maybe his personality and how that functions within the team, and maybe how he's the glue with all these personalities meshing together, then yeah, maybe you can make a case for Wolf having these hidden factors in which make him proven and able to function within such a legendary lineup as SKT. That's where that factor comes in, and that's something that you should consider when you're a general manager or a coach. Let's look at CLG and their current roster. Now, their whole entire roster, I thought this roster wasn't going to do anything when they were beginning in the spring split. And if you look at the bot lane, for instance, with Biofrost and with Stixxay, I don't think their personalities mesh that well. You have two people that were passive in both of their teams respectively, with Biofrost and Doublelift, and then with Aphromoo and Stixxay. I don't know how you think the bot lane is necessarily going to be able to function on their own or get their own leads, things like that. So I don't believe in the bot lane really at all. And then when you take into account removing Aphromoo from a CLG lineup, well, now you're without a shot caller, which Huhi and Darshan haven't really functioned as a shot caller for their team previously, because Aphromoo was there to bring those reins up. And then you have Reignover, which he is quite calculative in how he wants to function within the jungle, but it seems like he doesn't have a game plan after the first couple levels or after the first couple routes. So now you're stuck into this phase to where you can't get through the mid game or the late game because you don't have a shot caller that's thinking about the far future. You just have a person who's thinking about his kind of niche and what he wants to do in the jungle and how that kind of interacts with the other jungler. So I don't believe in the entire CLG lineup. I don't think that those personalities necessarily mesh together. And that's not to say that the players themselves are bad. All of them are pretty good individually, or at least sufficient in their roles. But when you just make a roster such as this to try and combine all of their playstyles and all of their personalities, I don't think it works well, personally. Now, another bright side is you look at Optic Gaming and Big, the support. When he came into the lineup, suddenly Optic Gaming were doing incredibly well, right? They started going on this massive win streak, and you can only wonder what are the faults of what happened with Optic Gaming in general, right? First, it was, yeah, their macro was was pretty bad. And then also you had their top laner Zig, who was also not that great. So now you switch out those two with Dokla and Big, and yeah, there's that other variable of switching someone else out when you get Big in there, but you can already tell just from the interviews and just his on-camera interactions that he's a very cheery person. He's someone that can brighten your spirits and make you laugh. And sometimes you need that. Sometimes you need that comedy within the game to say, "Hey guys, don't take this too seriously. You know, this is fun. We can still win. Let's come back. Like let's keep it up. Let's keep the morale up." And that's something that is very important and very underrated within teams. And I think Big provides that for Optic Gaming. Now, the NA scene in general is just too far focused on stats and hardcore analysis when it comes to picking up players. And I think that they need to consider how to mesh personalities and also mesh playstyles when they're considering someone for their roster. And coaches and GMs need to look into this in order to provide a very good roster for the next upcoming, season 9.